Hey guys, and welcome to my channel. If you're a subscriber, thank you so much for supporting my channel. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Daniela, an English teacher and a foreign language lover, and in today's video, I'll be discussing 10 grammar mistakes that some English learners and non-native speakers make. Just as a side note here, although the words mistakes and errors have a slightly different meaning, in this video, I use them interchangeably. This is just for simplicity and not to repeat the same word over and over again. As a non-native speaker myself, I know that some minor errors are hard to notice until someone points them out to you. To see why, check my other video about the importance of feedback in language learning. I will put the link in the description box below. If you make some of the mistakes I'm going to share in a moment, don't get frustrated. I know it takes time to break an old habit and build a new one. Most of these mistakes happen because our brains want to literally translate from our native language. So I want you to know that this is common and absolutely understandable. But when we become aware, we start to pay more attention and eventually we start using the correct form. So let's dive in and see what these errors are. The first one is when you ask what something is called. It usually refers to an object or a concept. Many people say, "How do you call this?" But the correct version is, "What do you call this?" If you make this mistake, ask yourself why. Is it because you're literally translating the question from your native language? Most probably yes. Sometimes, even when you know the correct version, you still keep making the same error because it's a habit for you. To break this habit, you will have to repeat the correct version many times. First, do it when you're alone, and later you can put yourself in a situation where you actually have to say it for real. Maybe you can find objects whose names you still don't know and ask some of your friends what these objects are called. If you don't have English-speaking friends, just type the question in Google and search for things. If you do it enough, your brain will get used to the correct form. The second mistake that I want to point out is when people say make a photo instead of take a photo. In Bulgarian or in Polish, for example, if I translate it literally, we make photos, but in English we take them. Let me know in the comments how this translates from your language. Do you make photos or do you take photos? If you say make photos in English, this is yet another habit you will have to try to break. The next error is saying that someone said you something instead of someone told you something. I sometimes hear students say he said me or she said me. I know this one can be confusing because there is a slight difference between the verbs say and tell. In this video, I won't go into details about the difference. I might do this in one of my next videos. Let me know in the comments if you'd like me to do that. But now I just wanted you to remember that if you want to use the word said, you need to add the preposition to. I said to her, she said to me, they said to him, etc. But if you don't use the preposition, you can't say said, she said me. You have to use she told me, I told her, they told them, etc. For example, what did your sister tell you? My sister told me that she was going to come visit me. Or you looked upset after the phone call with your sister. What did she say to you? She said to me that she wasn't going to come visit me. Or you can just say she said she wasn't going to visit. But I think in this particular situation, she told me she wasn't going to visit or she said she wasn't going to visit sound more natural than she said to me she wasn't going to visit. The next mistake is when someone says he learned me or she learned me when they mean he or she taught me something. This is probably because in some languages we use the same or a very similar word when you learn and when you teach something. But in English, you learn when you're the one consuming the information or acquiring a new skill, and you teach when you pass a skill you know to someone else. If you want someone to share with you some skill they have learned and mastered, you can ask them to teach you that skill. For example, you can say to your friend, I love the lasagna you made last time I visited you. I have the recipe and try to do it myself, but it wasn't the same. Can you teach me how to make it? I think many people actually know this, but they still make mistakes when they don't pay attention. Sometimes it's just a slip of the tongue, but just try to notice how often you make it if you ever make it. This next one I've heard predominantly from Spanish speakers. This is when they say I like it too much, when they mean I like it a lot or I like it very much. In English, too much has a negative connotation, so if you really like something, you can say very much or a lot, but not too much. For example, did you like the movie you saw last night? Yes, I liked it a lot. This next mistake is interesting because I personally misunderstood the person who made it when I heard it the first time. A while ago, a Spanish classmate of mine asked me, "Do you know New York?" Of course, I said. Who doesn't know New York? But I thought he'd ask me if I knew about the city. What he actually meant to ask was, have you ever been to New York? These are two different things. I think this is a literal translation from Spanish as well. Just remember that when it comes to places like cities, countries, buildings, etc., the correct way to ask someone is if they have been to this place or if they have ever visited this place. The next mistake on the list is married with. In English, you're actually married to someone and not with someone. If you're divorced from this person. So you can say, I've been married to my husband or wife for 10 years, or you can just say, I married my husband or wife 10 years ago. If you want to specify their profession, for example, you can say, I'm married to a doctor or I'm married to a scientist. You get the point. This next mistake also stems from literal translation from other languages, and this is putting an S at the end of uncountable nouns. For example, I sometimes hear people say, I like these furnitures instead of this furniture or this piece of furniture. Or people asking for advices instead of advice or a piece of advice. Some other examples of uncountable nouns are coffee, water, beauty, money, food, etc. If you don't know which nouns are uncountable, a quick Google search will give you the whole list. I know it's hard to remember all of them, and some of them might feel a bit counterintuitive, but if you pay attention, you will learn them over time. The next error that I've heard some non-native speakers make is either not using the present perfect tense or overusing it when it's not needed. For example, some people say, I live here for 10 years, but the correct version is I have lived or I have been living here for 10 years. Of course, you can also use the contraction I've lived or I've been living. But I think when people learn the present perfect, sometimes they start overusing it in sentences where they actually need to use the simple past. For example, I've heard people say, I've been there 5 years ago, or I've lived there when I was a student. But the correct form for these sentences is I was there 5 years ago, and I lived there when I was a student. You need the simple past form here because you specify the exact time. 5 years ago and when you were a student. When you use specific time like 5 or 10 years ago, 2011, when you were a student but you're not a student anymore, you need the simple past and not the present perfect form. Okay, we're almost done. Another mistake that some people make is constructing questions in the form of a statement. The only thing that indicates they're asking a question is their rising intonation. But this actually makes it sound like a tag question. For example, you're hungry? The correct form is, are you hungry? Where we put the auxiliary verb before the subject. We need to say, do you want some coffee? And not, you want some coffee? Or, are you tired? Instead of you're tired. If you only change your intonation but you don't use the correct grammar, the questions sound as though you're surprised that the person is hungry or tired or wants coffee. It's as though you don't expect the person to be hungry or tired. So make sure to always use the correct grammar when you ask a question. Guys, that was it for today. Let me know in the comments section below if you've ever made any of these mistakes. If you found this video helpful, click on the like button and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.